What is up, my YouTube gamers? Today we're going to be talking about Last Epoch. This is my starter for the hardcore version of the game. I have been playing online. We're about 22 hours into the video game and I'm level 77. Progression's been rough because of the server stability, as probably a lot of you guys have been experiencing, but also a lot of you guys have been asking the build that I'm playing, and this is it. This is my Archmage Skeleton Mage Necromancer, which is a build that some of you guys might remember from my stream. I played it quite a long time ago now. It all stems from something that I would like to give credit to somebody for, but I really can't. It's this snapshot of a character from probably like 3 or 4 years ago now, and it's just been really fun for me. It's a build that's progressing very smoothly. It's low life, so sustain is really cool. There's been a lot of improvements to low life in the recent patch. There's been some nerfs to the Archmage Necromancer as well. Certain helmet mods got removed from the game, but they added certain things on the weapon, so your weapon's a little bit more important now. They also messed around a little bit with Dreadshade. However, they also fixed another thing. So essentially this node used to give you 20% more damage, which isn't that big of a deal. However, this node actually didn't work the way that it used to in recent times, right before this patch, literally yesterday, and it used to make your minions miss. And if you're one of those people that got really frustrated by this, by your minion not correctly aiming at things, I can gladly report that this node went back to its old buggy state. I believe that it is bugged. So we get our 40% cast speed back. So basically, in the end game, the character is going to be better, but in the current stages, it's a little bit trickier with the monoliths being kind of difficult. But yeah, this is going to be a build diary, so I'm not going to go too in depth. I'm going to make sure to leave the snapshot of the character in the description. There's going to be a lot of things that I'm experimenting with. Obviously, with the Warlock coming out, we're trying to specialize into some things here. I might be using Ghost Flame in the future. The gear that I have right now is very random. I did get lucky with a Lich's Scorn. I am playing on Merchants, but it is on hardcore, so basically nobody's trading just yet. But I've actually managed to find a bunch of them. I don't know if they buffed the drop rates or if I've just been lucky. I have my boots, so I'm already low-lifing a little bit, and it's been quite pleasant. I am also using the experimental mod here, but I'm probably going to be changing a lot of these things because I just haven't paid too much attention to a lot of the new implicits and a lot of the new unique items. So if you have any suggestions, if there's maybe things that you think are a good idea for the build that I've missed so far, be sure to stop by the stream and let me know if things are all that much different from the snapshot. My character that I played probably about a year ago now was pretty significantly different from this one, strictly because I am playing a hardcore, so I will be focusing on defenses. I am trying to get probably 20 to 25,000 ward on this character. We'll see how that's going to go. Death Rattle also got nerfed, so I might be switching out that. I never actually even used Jolraz in the first place. Much nicer relic. There's a much nicer ward retention belt. I think Chronostasis is really good, but there's another weapon that you can use for plus skeletal mage levels, which is really nice. There's also another factor, which is Warlock nodes that scale in a way that int essentially gives you mana, which means that we can then get more levels on our skeletal mage, which wasn't really that important previously, and pick up Forbidden Arcana. I think another cool piece of tech that I'm going to be incorporating into this build, some of the new experimental mods. Well, I'm saying new, it's been like a year since they've been in the game, so probably a lot of people have modified it, but I actually haven't played since then that much. So things like this should drastically increase the clear speed because it's going to allow my little Fernando to teleport around and destroy enemies even further. But again, since this is a build diary, those are kind of the concepts that I'm battling with right now, and I would like to talk about now how I leveled and how I ended up transitioning to low life, because that's probably going to be the part of the gameplay, if you're trying to copy the character, that's going to affect the most. So I think by far, not just for this character but for any necromancer, the best way to level right now is to use Wandering Spirits, Spirit Plague, and kind of a new addition to the arsenal of necromancer leveling, but not really. It's Summon Wraith. and I'll explain that in just a second, because there was a very important part of the patch notes that was kind of edited weirdly. It seemed like something that was affecting warriors was actually affecting rates. Like, they edited it poorly. Some people might have missed that, but it's pretty standard. When it comes to Wandering Spirits, you've got two different routes and they both work incredibly well. I like going the poison route, which is you're either going to be picking up the spirit duration into the reveal range, at which point you're going to be specking over to spiritual putrescence and then getting infectious dead for that poison conversion, and at that point you can pretty much do whatever. Soul of Filth is really good. Tethered Existence is really good. Tethered Existence is really good even before that. They've removed the sliding around monsters, which was very frustrating, especially on bosses, because Wandering Spirits should be able to walk through enemies, but they were pushing them around, which essentially reduced their damage by a tremendous amount, which meant that something like Spectral Putrescence was really good, but now actually just dealing damage, even in the leveling stages of Wandering Spirits, is probably completely insane. I mean, Wandering Spirits is just one of the best abilities in the game, period. The builds around it are incredibly powerful. Then we've got the Spirit Plague, which is also pretty straightforward. You want to be picking up Plague Bearer as soon as possible. This is just super useful very early on. And then you've got a decision to make. You can either go for Plague of Eyes, depending on the amount of intelligence that you have on your gear. I think if you have even 20 intelligence, this node is insane. If you're just starting off, it might be a better call to go for Toxic Transmission. The thing that's really important about Spirit Plague is that you can use it both for AoE and single target. So every time you cast it, even though it's an ability that doesn't hit, these nodes actually apply poison stacks. And then you can also get Bleed, which is a very good and powerful leveling tool. So you're going to get 3 stacks here, 3 stacks here. Every time you cast, the mob gets 6 stacks, right? 3 of each of one of these. And it just makes for a very smooth AoE clear. And it makes for a very powerful single target. If you think that your single target is lacking, you can always pick up Rotten to the core. It's very good. And then you can get Concentrated Rot, which I don't personally love, but it is an incredibly powerful node. I just find that in the early game, you can blast away. And then we've got the Summon Wraith. And this is specifically the node that I was talking about. Sequel of Avarice. This node seemed to be affecting skeletons, but it's actually a Wraith node in the patch notes. And this node got 5% AoE per point, 20% damage per point, and 30% health per point. And it makes the progression so smooth. These guys hit so hard. Normally, when you're leveling a Necromancer, the actual summon part is really not that strong because Wandering Spirits and Spirit Plague is just overpowered. But holy moly, regular rates are just incredible, and with the HP that they've got, you don't have to summon them that much, so you pretty much just rush this as soon as possible. And a really strong recommendation after that is just going for Serrated Sights, because again, Bleed is very good. You can get the Bleed effect, and if you get lucky, which doesn't really require a whole lot of effort, you can use one of these chest pieces, the doublet of Ono's Tool, whatever, which you can use from level 5, and it makes your bleeds pretty freaking insane. At that point, when you get to around level 40, depending on the amount of passives that you can get, because you need to have Dreadshade to start playing the build in the first place. So for me, it was around level 40. I think I had 14 passives from quests. And you get Dreadshade. You might want to be, initially, when it comes to your passives, speccing into the intelligence here. Blood Aura is very good for leveling. Dark Ritual is not that good. This is something that you spec into later. Obviously, I've got the ward, so you would disregard this. Maybe you want a little bit more survivability for your minions and for yourself. You might want to take this. Initially, also, picking up Dominion of Rot is very good. But at the point at which you're going to be specking into the actual build, which again is around level 40, you need to be able to put 30 points into Necromancer to have access to Dreadshade. One of the big problems with Necromancer is that the early point investment in it is garbage. It's one of the worst passive trees on the entire planet, so you just want to be maxing out Elixir of Hunger. You might want to put some points into Risen Army. You might want to get Cursed Blood. This is actually very, very good. And then get the Minion Armor Shred combined with it, which most of our damage is coming from dots, but the Armor Shred does work pretty well. At which point you're getting Tyrant, and that's pretty much all that you want to be doing. You should be having Dreadshade. So there's a lot of customization here as long as you have those 30 points. And my personal recommendation would be to keep the Wandering Spirits, keep the Spirit Plague, but unspec the other things. I actually ended up unspecking the Wandering Spirits and keeping the Summon Wraith. Up to you. You're specializing into Dreadshade, and there are basically two very important things. First of all, you need All for One, and you need Egoism. So Egoism is the important part, number one, and the second one is Lone Watcher. Without these nodes, Dreadshade just doesn't work well enough. Everything else here is insane. Blind Fury is insane. Grim Fate is insane. Like, this is just insane. But to make the build work initially, I think you need like a level 8 Dreadshade, and that's all that you're going to ever need for this. And then the other thing is the Summon Skelly Mages that you can specialize into at level 35. At which point you're already leveling them up, and I would personally suggest getting points into Gravetide or Splintered Dominion if you need a little bit more AoE. Don't spec into Cryomancers or anything like that. Start to specialize into Cellar Mortis because it's very useful for leveling, and put at least 1 point into Grey Merchant. This way, all that you're going to need ever as a mandatory thing to be able to play the build is going to be 4 points in this, Archmage, at least 1 point in Grey Merchant, but I would personally recommend 2 because your minion survivability might be a little wonky at the first stages when you're switching. And that's really all that you need. So I think it's like level 8 Summon Skeletal Mage and level 8 Dreadshade. Once you've got that, swap everything over, swap your passives, change over to Infernal Shade, make sure to pick up Devouring Flames, Subjugation. This is actually a very cool node now because it used to be uncapped. You used to be able to get the damage that your Infernal Shade is dealing to your minion to like insane degrees, but now it caps it at 180, so you really don't need a whole lot of defenses for your minion. You don't need the extra health to keep it alive between packs as it's melting itself down. That's super duper comfortable, although in the first stages it might be a little annoying for a couple levels. Obviously, Burn Trail is very important. Obviously, Manic Pyre are the things that we're getting, but I personally would go for Soulfire. So you're just charging in here, getting Soulfire, getting Burn Trail, and then you're getting Manic Pyre last. And then honestly, the rest of the points don't matter. Ignition is, you know, the best that we can get. Crackling Flames do nothing, and then Brimstone, hey, who doesn't like slowing things? I guess it's really kind of useless. At that point, you should have still 4 abilities, so I would recommend speccing into Sigil Mortis and getting as many points into Defile Defense as you can, at which point Reaper's Mark is also very good. Just increasing this duration is very valuable. At level 50, you're getting all the defensive stuff from Transplant, also something that just isn't that important, right? Doombringer is good, and then you're just getting defenses. That's pretty much all that you gotta do for the build. Again, in the future, I will be experimenting with it. I think the Ghost Flame has a lot of potential because there's a lot of defensive nodes. You've got things like Disdain, that's 40% reduced damage taken. In the Warlock tree, you've got things like this node, which is 3% per point, and you can put 8 points. It's 3% reduced damage. You've got things like Ward of Malevolence, which gives you ward per second per intelligence while channeling, which is something that you're always doing with Ghost Flame. Also, with this ability, you've got one of the craziest defensive nodes, I think, in the entirety of this game's existence, which is Ethereal Blockade. All of your dodge rating is converted to armor while channeling Ghost Flame, and then dodge rating changes to armor while channeling at a rate of 100. Like, this is crazy. Like, this node is completely insane, because if you look at the precursor, dodge rating per intelligence while channeling is 10 per point. So you're getting 40 dodge per point of intelligence, which then turns into, I'm actually not sure, either 40 or 80% or 80 flat armor. Actually, no, this was nerfed. Oh, look. Okay. I actually haven't looked at this since the launch of the patch. This node, when they originally announced it, was more dodge rating while channeling was 100%. But now it's changed to 25%, which totally makes sense that they nerfed it. But it's still incredible. Okay, that's why I was confused about the 100%. So it converts at 100% and you get 25% bonus. So the 40% turns into... the 40 flat turns into 50 flat. Which, again, is completely mind-blowing. If you've ever played this game, you understand how useful armor is, and this node is incredible. But if you think that it's annoying that you have to stand around and cast Ghost Flame, we can pick up Spirit of Dread, which allows us to move around and at a faster pace with Ghost Flame. So we're just going to be Ghost Flaming around while being borderline immortal. There is one problem, though. This thing costs an insane amount of mana. I mean, holy moly, it's 40 mana cost. We can decrease it by 70% here, but then we get another extra 50% here. So we can only decrease it by like 20%. There's also nodes like these ones, but these ones remove movement speed, so you really don't want to be using these. Instead, you want to be fixing the actual mana issue. And I'll be honest, I have no idea. I have no clue how to fix it. I'll hopefully come up with something, because I think it would be a pretty cool part of the build. I think also for leveling, another mention, I guess, that I should have talked about a long time ago. Some of you guys might be thinking, Skeleton Rogues, Rise. This thing has gotten buffed insanely. These things are crazy. For leveling, they must be nuts. And I gotta tell you, I did a pretty decent amount of testing for them, and they're trash. I mean, I think for endgame, this is a genuine build, but for leveling, the rates just beat them out completely, and the other abilities is what it is. So, yeah, the Skeleton Rogues, nice potential, but yeah, hold off with another build. I'll probably be making a build with them, because they do seem pretty cool, and there's some cool new tricks that you can do with the changes to like snapshotting minions and whatnot. And yeah. Oh, and speaking of snapshotting, one final thing. There's an incredibly annoying bug with this build, and you will suffer as I have suffered. Anytime you get teleported, not just when changing zones, but also when changing like areas within an area. So like while changing from a monolith to another monolith, or like I was just fighting Lagon and you get teleported to the ad phase and then back. Because they changed that you can no longer snapshot your minions, meaning that every time you go through one of those transitions, your minion is essentially recasted. There's an incredibly infuriating bug, which makes it so that the Dread Shade and the Infernal Shade are permanent on your skeleton, but they don't actually buff it or debuff it in any way. However, if you don't make a new skeleton and instead you just cast new versions of these abilities onto your Fernando, it will do nothing, with the exception of your Dread Shade going on a brutal 18-second cooldown, which is infuriating. So every time you're stunning a monolith with the changes, we shouldn't have to cast a new Skeletal Mage, but unfortunately you do. And every time something transitions, you have to plan around the fact that if you cast your Dread Shade, you will not be able to use it for 18 seconds if you get teleported in. And it actually almost killed me, because I was paying so much attention to this thing bugging out that I ran into a Lagon beam. That wasn't cool. But yeah, once I have more information for you guys, I'll be sure to post an update on the build diary, and eventually, hopefully if I don't die, we're gonna get a build guide out for everybody, and also if the servers hold up. Yeah, if you guys got suggestions, make sure to stop by the stream on the Twitch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.